Welcome everyone to this edition of the CSIA Partner Technical Webinar Series. My name is Tony Veroven and I am the CSIA Membership and Marketing Manager. I'm happy to introduce our webinar hosts from Bluestone Marketing. CSIA is pleased to co-sponsor this educational webinar with our CSIA partner members, valued industry proponents, and conference speakers. For those of you who are unfamiliar with CSIA, we're the only trade association focused on advancing the system integration industry. Our vision is to ensure that manufacturing and process industries everywhere have access to low-risk, safe, and successful application of automation technology. To accomplish this, CSIA supports system integrator companies in becoming better businesses. We offer guidance to improve integrator effectiveness with our best practices and benchmarks manual, an open forum to network and learn from other companies, and opportunities to market within the industry. As our members continue to improve their management skills, they can begin to work toward becoming CSIA certified, an industry standard in business excellence. CSIA membership offers members access to resources needed to attain its business goals. These benefits include networking opportunities at the annual executive conference, marketing toolkits, educational materials, and the Industrial Automation Exchange, an online buyer's guide and community that connects end-user clients with system integrators and industry suppliers. CSIA just launched the Talking Industrial Automation podcast, where you get to know the people that make modern manufacturing and processing possible. Visit talkingindustrialautomation.com to listen and subscribe. If you have not done so already, I encourage you to register for the 2018 CSIA Executive Conference, April 24th through the 27th in San Francisco. Visit controlsys.org for more information. David Stone of Bluestone Marketing is our presenter today. He will be speaking at our conference next month. David, thanks so much for giving everyone a little preview on maybe what you'll be talking about next month, and I'll let you take over and take it away.
Thank you very much, Tony, and good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us here today. As Tony said, we're going to be having the conference next month in San Francisco. Really looking forward to that, and I'm going to be speaking there, doing a longer session about marketing for system integrators. But this morning, what we wanted to do is just take this 1-hour session and throw some things at you that you may or may not be aware of when it comes to marketing your services. And as the title says, we got 7.5 surprising things that you might not know or didn't know about SI marketing. We're going to walk through those things, and as you well know, marketing is kind of a challenging topic. We all know we need to do it. We all know we need to get the word out there about your firm. There's some fairly intense competition among your competitors. And as much as we like to say things about our competitors that may not always be as polite as we think, as your mom taught you, the fact that we can call them competitors means that on any given day they're capable of winning against you. The truly incompetent in the business weed themselves out real fast. And those that are left are pretty darn good. And we have to learn how to present ourselves to our prospective clients, how to persuade prospective clients, and that's what we're going to be talking about here today. So we've got, as I said, 7.5 things that I want to share with you. So let's dive into those things, shall we? And the first thing that I want to tell you about, which may be a little bit shocking for you, maybe even an awful lot shocking, but the truth is that clients don't actually want to buy what you sell. And, we say, well, why are they getting in touch with us? Why are they writing RFPs? Well, when you think about stuff that we all buy, I'm willing to bet a fair bit that there has never been in the history of systems integration, there's never been a client who saved up, putting their pennies away in their piggy bank and counting down the days until we can hire the systems integrator. Nobody saves up for that kind of thing. We save up to buy, to pay for a vacation. We might save up for a new Porsche. Or who knows what. There's all kinds of fun things that we all love to buy and that we want to buy, but that systems integration, that falls into the same category as life insurance. Nobody wants to buy it. We know we have to, but saving up for it and thinking, oh, that's a wonderful thing to spend my money on, we're not in that category. So we fall into the category of things that people have to buy but don't necessarily want to buy. And what that means then is it influences how we go about selling. And one of the things that we see on a regular basis is the stuff and the messages that we try to send out there, the way we talk to clients in our attempt to persuade them to hire us instead of somebody else, tends to be fairly ineffective when we start realizing we're selling stuff nobody wants to buy. And I want to give you an example of this. And this example comes from a real engineering firm. Now, in this particular case, this example that I'm going to tell you, this is not a systems integration firm. This is a civil engineering firm. But let's face it, we all sell these kind of services. Now, this particular firm had got hired to work, do their design work on a data center. Now, you guys may find yourselves working on data centers from time to time. There's all kind maybe, you're working on process stuff, maybe you're working on a food and beverage program, whatever it is, whatever this facility is. Now, this particular engineering firm worked on this project, and it was finished, and it was very successful. But it was very interesting. After the fact, I went and looked at two different things. One was I went and looked at what the client, the owner of this data center, was saying about this particular facility that they now have and that they're very proud of. And let me show you, when I went to the client's website, here is what they said about this facility. Look at that. It helps companies accelerate business performance by connecting them to customers and partners inside the world's most networked data centers, strategic communications hub for the eastern United States, major communication gateways to Europe. Wow, this is big ideas, isn't it? This is stuff that your mom would be really proud of you for having contributed to. If you worked on this project, wow, what a neat thing that you've accomplished here. This is what the client wants to buy. When the client that you're talking to, maybe your client is a food processing company, maybe it's a manufacturing company, they have a mission statement, and their mission statement says things like, we're going to be providing food for people, we're going to provide healthy food, we're going to provide new widgets at lower costs, all kinds of things that they're excited about. And this is the kind of thing, that's what the client wants to buy. But then later I went and looked also at what the engineering firm said about the same project. So this is how the client describes the project. What the engineer said, this was a zoning conversion, special exemption permit, topographic construction surveying, high accuracy building control for construction, easement plats, utility maps. Listen, read that stuff, all right? Nobody wants to buy that. They know they have to have it. Now, you can insert your stuff in there, too. We've got process controllers, we've got sensors, we've got dashboards, we've got all these things. Well, good for you, but nobody wants them. People have to have them, but we like to, when we talk about the messaging that you should have in your marketing, we like to talk about what I call the need behind the need. So yes, in this case, there was a need for easement plats and utility mapping. Yeah, we get that, but nobody wanted it. What was behind that? And what was behind that was this statement that the client says, you know, world-class network data centers, strategic communication hubs. That's the need behind the need. So as you are talking to your prospective clients, and as you are trying to put together the message, what will we say to these people? Step beyond what it is that you actually do and the work that you do. Step beyond that and think about, why is the client doing this? What are they hoping to achieve? And how can our work help them achieve that? So while we can't ignore the specifics and the technical aspects of the work that you do, make sure that you always link it to that client's goals and aspirations. What is the big, hairy, audacious goal that they're trying to accomplish? And show how your work and your services can help get them to that place. Show how you can take them to a place that they've never been before. Take them to a place that they've dreamed about, because that's what they want to buy. They don't want to buy your programming. They don't want to buy your you know, skid solutions that you're going to bring in on a truck and plug in. They really would rather not have to have all that stuff. But that stuff is going to take them to the stuff that they really do want. So as you're talking to your clients, never forget what we call the need behind the need. Think about what it is that your client is really wanting to buy and show how your services connect with those. So that's the first thing, the first surprising thing. Clients don't really want to buy what you sell, which leads us to the second surprising thing, and that is that what you actually sell is completely and utterly invisible. You can't, I mean, really, when you think about it, what you're selling is your knowledge. You're selling your ideas, your skill sets. While it's true that in, you know, in numerous cases, you might produce, maybe you've got a fabrication within your shop, and you're producing some, you know, instrumentation, and you're producing sensors, and you're producing dashboards that go onto the computers. That's really kind of beyond your end product. The real work that you do is making all that stuff work, and that you can't see, you can't taste, you can't smell, you can't touch it. And what's also very important is that your clients are not able to try out ahead of time what it is that you sell. Now, this is an important concept to get our heads around. If you're going to buy, I don't know, a new car or a pair of shoes or something like that, you get to take it for a test drive. You get to try on those shoes and see, yeah, do they fit? Do they feel comfortable? Does the car handle the way I want it to? How do I feel sitting in this car? Is it comfortable? You get to try these things out ahead of time. Your services, though, your clients cannot try out ahead of time. They have no way to actually personally experience what it is like to work with you, what it is that you're going to produce for them. Now, in our marketing, we go on and tell people, well, look, we did a project for these people, and they really liked it. It turned out really well. Look at the project, look at the system we put in, the SCADA system we put in for this treatment plant there. Look how well that's working and how pleased that client is. Well, that kind of stuff is evidence that my project might work out well, probably going to work out well, but that's somebody else's project. You know, it's kind of like shopping for a vacation. You know, you think about it, you know, we've just been through winter, and winter seems to be hanging on for far too long this year. And you're thinking about going south somewhere warm. How do you buy that? Well, you go online, you go on TripAdvisor, you go on those websites, and you look at all these nifty pictures of the resorts. But these are pictures that other people took. And you go on TripAdvisor and you read reviews of resorts, but those are reviews that of other people's experiences. Now, it might be an indicator that your vacation is going to be a good one, but it's no guarantee. And based simply on somebody else's experience, you then have to buy. And that's how we sell our services too. All you can show them is what you've done for other people. You can't show them what they're actually going to have themselves. They got to pay for it ahead of time, and then they can have it. And then having paid for it, they can't take it back if they're not happy. You know, you buy a pair of shoes, and if it turns out there's something wrong with them or the color wasn't quite what you wanted, you can return them. They'll give you your money back. Or if you buy the car and something goes wrong with it, you take it back because there's a warranty and they'll fix it. But you buy that vacation and it rains all week and it's chilly, you can't take that back and get it repaired under warranty. And if your system doesn't work exactly the way they want it, they can't take it back and say, sorry, give me the one I wanted. You know, we can all hire lawyers, but that doesn't help anybody, does it? So what we're selling is completely and utterly invisible. And what that means, and here's the takeaway from this piece, is that what they're truly going to be depending on, you can show them all kinds of great pictures and write-ups about projects that you did, but what they're going to actually buy is the trust that they have in you. You personally, when you shake their hand and look them in the eye and say, I'm going to look after you on this project, that's what they're actually buying. Their trust in you that you're going to do the good job, because they know they can't try it out ahead of time and they know they can't return it if things don't work out quite the way they'd hoped. So that is why, and you've heard everybody say this is a relationship-based business. And this is why relationships are so important, because your client cannot try your services out ahead of time, and they cannot return it after the fact if it didn't work out the way they'd hoped. The only thing that they've got to go on that they can really trust is when you look them in the eye and shake their hand. Yeah, we can have all kinds of contracts, but again, it all goes back to lawyers at the end of the day. So this is what they've got to go on. Keep in mind, what you're selling is quite intangible. A lot of people don't understand it at all. They get it that I have to have something that can tell me how my plant's working, and yes, some of the technical folks and the operations folks might understand it, but the higher-ups, they don't have a clue. They don't have a technical background that you do, and frankly, they're not terribly interested in it. They've got a business case that they're trying to build, and they're trusting that you're going to help them realize that business case. So this is the second thing. What you sell is actually quite invisible. Can't touch it, feel it, taste it, smell it, try it out ahead of time, and you can't return it for a refund or a warranty or an exchange after the fact if it didn't work out. So that says a lot about how you need to talk to your clients and what the kind of reassurances that they're looking for from you. Because it also, unlike the pair of shoes, you know, that pair of shoes that didn't work out, never did feel quite comfortable, and sit in the back of your closet until you give them to the Goodwill, well, so you're out $100. But your services, you know, if that doesn't work out, that leaves a serious mark. All right, let's go on to item number 3, this surprising thing number 3. And that is that you have to, when you're selling, when you're talking to your clients, when you're talking to prospective clients, we have to be able to sell on more than just the merits of your work. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, when most systems integrators go out there and when I look at the proposals that you write and I hear the pitches that you make to your clients, what we can, I can kind of sum that up by saying we do good work and, you know, we do high quality work. And we do it on time and we do it on budget. That's kind of that's the essence of the message that we give. And then we back that up and we say, we do high quality work. Look at this project. We did high quality work for this person, and look at this one. We got this one done on time for that guy. And we're basically selling on the fact that we do good work. That's the merits of our work. But the problem is, we got a bunch of competitors out there. And every single one of those competitors also does really good work. Now, you might argue back and forth a little bit and say, well, I remember so-and-so, you know, when they did a job, it didn't work nearly as well. Well, I can probably point to one of yours that maybe didn't work out quite exactly the way you'd hoped. But if you genuinely call them competitors, we got to admit that they're pretty good at what they do. And as much as we like to badmouth them, you know, when we talk to them, they're nice people, they're smart people, and they do good work too. So from a client's perspective, think about this. Sit yourself down on the other side of the desk and look at it from the client's perspective. So I've got half a dozen systems integrators out there all saying that I can do your work for you, all saying that I do high quality work, all saying I'll get it done on time and on budget, all of whom, you know, can show me evidence that they've done that before. And everybody starts to look the same after a while, don't they? And that, unfortunately, is the economic definition of a commodity, which the economic definition of a commodity is anything at all, whether it's a product or a service, you know, whether you're buying widgets or whether you're buying systems integration, where in the perception of the buyer, the only difference from buying from one source or the other is price. And at that point, great, I've got all of you lined up there, you all do good work, you're all going to get this thing done on time, who's got the lowest price? And it makes sense. I'd choose that way too. And we all like to say, well, no, we want to compete on qualifications. Well, how do you prove, you know, you've been doing this for 25 years, those guys have only been doing it for 23 years, so we're more qualified? No, there's a point at which we're all really well qualified. And how do you pick most qualified from fully qualified? So we have to start selling on other aspects of it. And yes, you know, it's how do we get along? I want you to think about, here's a concept. We've all had the experience of walking into a store. Think about this. You walk into a store, you're intending to buy a new shirt or a blouse or a pair of shoes or whatever. And you walk into a store with that intent. We've all had the experience of walking into that store and then, 3 minutes later, walking back out of the store, not having bought anything and having decided that I'm never going to set foot in that store again, and maybe I'm even going to make it a personal mission that nobody else does either. And we've also had the opposite experience of walking into that store intending to buy a shirt or a blouse and 2 hours later coming out with an entire wardrobe. And neither of those decisions had anything to do with the shirts or blouses that they had or the prices that they charged. It had everything to do with your experience, how they treated you, how did they greet you, what kind of, you know, did they smile, did they seem genuine, were they sincere, the kind of service that they provided to you. And it's the subtlest of things. We've all been turned off by just a facial expression or some body language or a tone of voice. And it had nothing to do with the fact that, or what they were selling. The stuff they were selling was great. The prices were fine too. But there's a bunch of other things that come into the mix. And this is exactly the same situation for your clients as well. And so I want to pose a question to you, and that is, what's it like to shop at your systems integration store? Now, I bet you've never thought of that before, you know, the notion that, well, we have a store. Well, actually you do. And you've got people that walk in the front door and they come up to the counter and they say, I'd like to buy 10 pounds of systems integration, please. Now, no one's ever said it like that, but if you pull back and think about it, that's what they're doing. And all the time, just like you in any store, just like you, they're looking around while they're waiting for their shoes or systems, their new system to be delivered. They're looking around and they're assessing and making all manner of subjective judgments, sometimes even unconsciously. And so what's it like to phone in to your office? You know, when somebody answers the phone, for example, do you get the impression that that you've really kind of interrupted their day? Or do you get the impression that it's almost like they were sitting waiting for your call and nothing could please them more than to do whatever it is to help you? We all have experienced that, and we have to apply the same standards to our own product or to our own services that we're providing. So ask yourself that question. Maybe even ask some of your clients that question, and buy them a couple of beers first so that you get some honest answers, because it really matters. This beyond we do good work. Yes, we expect that you do good work. Clients have that as a minimum requirement. I like to joke that you go out, you're shopping for a new car, and the salesman says to you, you ought to buy this car. It'll start every morning. Well, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and frankly up in Canada, and back in those days when we had carburetors, there wasn't always guaranteed that your car would start every morning. But good heavens, today, if there's even some kind of doubt that it won't start every morning, I'm not even thinking about buying your car. I want to know if I can talk to the dashboard and have it send a text to my friend. That's the kind of evaluation I'm doing. And it's the same with your clients. And when we say things to them like, we'll get it done on time and on budget, what they're hearing is it'll start every morning. And they're saying, yeah, you're darn right you'll get it done on time and on budget, but what else you'll do? Because the only people that I'm even thinking about talking to are fully capable of getting it done on time and on budget. So that it kind of forces us to raise the game and ask yourself this question: what's it like to shop at your store? Let's move on. Number 4 of these 7.5 surprising things. We've probably all said many, many times, everybody in the firm needs to be involved in business development. Well, I got a different take on that, and I don't think so. I do not think that everybody needs to be involved in business development. I do think that everybody in the firm needs to make a contribution to clients who come back, clients who, like we talked about before, who are shopping in our store decide to come back again. Everybody that, from the receptionist who answers the phone right up to your most senior project managers, to your principals, everybody needs to understand their role in customer service. But I don't think everybody should be involved in business development or out there finding new work. Now, I find, we have a lot of project managers who carry the role of what we call seller-doer. I need you to execute these projects, but I also need you to be out there selling as well. And unfortunately, we get an awful lot of square pegs trying to ram themselves into round holes, and it damages the peg and the hole at the same time if you hit it hard enough. So what we need to do is start being a little bit more careful in how we are assessing the people who are responsible for business development, who are responsible for bringing in that steady supply of work. And not everybody is really good at this. And in fact, there's some people who truly suck at it. And we got to make sure that we're dealing with the right people. And so what we want to do is start looking at these people and analyzing some personality traits and some skill sets that they have. And we like to, here at Busto Marketing, we like to search for what we call the sales gene. Do they have what it takes to be a successful seller? If you're going to be a seller-doer, then the seller part of it is pretty important. And we've had all kinds of training in the doer part of it, but almost none in the seller part of it. We're just told, get out there and do business development, bring in work. Well, nobody told me how. I spent 5 years learning how to design a SCADA system, but nobody told me how to sell. They just told me to go and do it. And not only is it a particular skill set, and as you well know, there's a particular personality type that lends themselves well to the kind of technical work that you do, whether it's programming, whether it's engineering, no matter what it is, there's a particular personality sort, and there's skill sets that lend themselves to that. And it's exactly the same when we look at those people who are responsible for out there being to sell. And when we ask what makes up the sales gene, well, it all starts with something that we like to call drive. And what is drive? Well, drive is kind of a shorthand for the personality style that lends itself really, really well to a sales role. And what is drive? Well, drive has three components to it, and the people who really excel in the sales department have these three traits. And the first one is they all have this built-in need for achievement. They all set themselves goals, and usually they set themselves high goals and say, I have to do this. I have to achieve this. And then next year they raise the bar on themselves, because they thrive on this need for achievement, and they thrive on meeting goals and then setting a new one and beating that one again. There's something inside them that has this. The second characteristic that makes up this total drive is a level of competitiveness, constantly competing, whether it's with themselves or whether it's with others, which is very related to this need for achievement. But, oh, man, they love a contest. They love a contest. Again, this is what I sold last year. Next year, I'm going to up that by 10%. Next year, I'm going to up that by 20%. And, okay, if I've got, 5 business developers in the company, I want to be the one that wins. I want to be the one that sells the most. That's the kind of person that is out there and so utterly successful at business development. And as you know, this does not necessarily describe our best technical folks, okay? Not always. The third trait that helps make up this drive is an unrelenting, unstoppable sense of optimism. And, these people, it can be pouring rain and it can be miserable weather, but they're looking up and saying, you know what, I see a tiny little bit of blue there and I know it's going to be sunny tomorrow. We meet these people and sometimes we think they're so annoying, but there they are. And the best business developers have that optimism. And you've heard it. Perhaps you're involved in sales yourself and you get out there, there's a whole lot of rejection. And you look at the statistics, and there's things like 9 times out of 10, what you're going to hear is no. Sometimes they're polite and they say no thanks, but frequently they say not no, hell no. And unless you have that sense of optimism that says, well, the next guy's going to say yes, it can beat you down pretty hard. But the best business developers have all 3 of these traits built into their genetic code. And they're absolutely unstoppable. They have to achieve these things. They're so competitive, and they're just endlessly optimistic. If you compare that to what makes a great engineer, when you think about it, an engineer is a trained professional pessimist, because what we do, we spend all our time thinking about what might go wrong and then building a system to prevent that from happening, building in all these safeguards, building in safety factors. Whereas the optimist will say, I'm sure it's going to work just fine. And this is where we often run into trouble when we have the technical people doing the sales or trying to find somebody who is every bit as comfortable on both sides of that equation. It's tough to find those people. And so what frequently happens is we get somebody who's a really great programmer or a really great engineer, and we want to promote them. So now you're a project manager. And with project management comes along this seller-doer responsibility. And then if they really do well, we'll just we lose a really good engineer and gain an absolutely mediocre project manager or seller. So we got to be careful about that. Let's look for that sales gene and make sure that the people we're asking to get out there and do the selling for us are people that have those skill sets. And while we're at it, let's not be afraid to use that S word. What's the S word? Sell. We like to use euphemisms like client development, business development. No, folks, it's selling. We got to get out there and sell. You got services, you got to sell them, and you got to persuade somebody to pay you money to do what you do. And that is selling. And there's nothing the least bit to be ashamed of or to be afraid of about that selling. Now, there's lots of things that people think about and say, oh, I don't want to be that used car salesman. Well, we don't have to be. There's a whole lot of really fantastic sales techniques that have nothing to do with high-pressure tactics, but have a tremendous amount to do with fabulous customer service. And we need to take the time and learn about those kinds of techniques. All right, let's move on, shall we? Let's move on to number 5. Number 5 of the surprising things that you might not have known. And number 5 is that there are absolutely no new clients out there. And by the way, I get it that some of these, you're saying, boy, does he have any good news anywhere? Because these are all negatives. Well, the fact is that there's a lot of really good news out there. The really good news is that your firm is really good at what it does, and there are a whole bunch of people who need what you do. Marketing and selling is all about the persuasion that's required. But where do I get this number 5? Well, I get a lot of firms coming to me, and a lot of principals coming to me and saying, okay, you've got your finger on the pulse of the market. Where are the great new emerging markets? What's the great one that I can go to? And there's all kinds of clients there. Well, the truth is, no, there aren't any. The other day I saw a photograph, and way back in the 1800s, when we were settling the West, and go west, young man, and all that good stuff, and there was just endless open space. So last week I was actually out in the West. I was out in Idaho and looking around, and there's still a whole lot of open space out there. It looks fabulous, and you can imagine those pioneers trundling across the prairie and basically saying, where do you want to drive in a steak and call home, because there's tons and tons of it. Well, that was then, and this is now, and there's not too many square inches of this country that aren't, people haven't settled and said, okay, this one's mine. We don't have a lot of space left. And that is exactly the same as the situation with your clients, and as we look for new opportunities. And the truth is that that next new client that you're going to get, well, right now, today, as we're sitting here talking, they are currently being served by one of your competitors. Now, how well they're being served by one of your competitors, well, we might be able to debate that. And, is there value that you might be able to offer that others are not offering them? Probably and hopefully. But the fact is, there's no client out there right now looking around saying, where on earth can I find a systems integrator for my plant? I just can't find anybody. There's no shortage of people that can provide this service, and clients know that, and so they know that they have all kinds of choices. But this has implications for your marketing and the messaging that you're sending out. It has implications that say, I can't assume that I'm going there and that they're desperate to find somebody and they haven't found somebody before. You have to go there with the understanding that that client is currently being served by somebody else. And so you then have a double task. You have the task to steal that market share. Any expansion that you enjoy comes at the cost of somebody else. So this, at any given state of the market, it is what we like to call a zero-sum game. If I gain, you lose. If you gain, I lose. And so we have to recognize that your growth comes from one of your competitors. Now that might sound kind of hard-hearted, but if you're looking for growth, you cannot just say, okay, we're going to grow 10% this year without thinking, where's that going to come from? Where are those clients currently? And that means that as you talk to those clients, you've got a double challenge on your hand. The first challenge you have is to persuade them that you, in fact, have something of value to offer, that you, in fact, have something to offer that they're not currently having. The second challenge that you have is to give them a compelling reason to leave where they are now. And that's a difficult thing for a lot of people to do. Yeah, maybe, maybe the grass is slightly greener over there, but this pasture's pretty nice and it's pretty comfortable, and, we've got this relationship, we know how we work together. So there's an inertia built in to that client that you want to win. because they have an incumbent firm that's already doing their work for them, and you need to provide a good reason, a compelling reason for them to switch. And again, there's two pieces of this message. One is, hey, look what you're going to get when you come here. And number two is, here's why it's worthwhile and to go to the effort and the trouble of leaving where you are. It's like moving your house. You know, maybe that other house is a little bit bigger and it's a little bit more modern, and maybe the neighborhood is you know, it's a little closer to the schools, whatever it is. But, oh man, moving is a whole lot of trouble. We got to pack up all this stuff, and then we got to hire a mover, and then we got to get the kids registered in the new school. No, let's just stay where we are. And that's the situation that your clients are in. So keep in mind that you've got to overcome this double challenge and be prepared to show up to them and being able to articulate this overwhelming advantage of working with you that they will enjoy when they switch and when they work with you. It's not nearly good enough to just say, hey, we do good work, because that isn't nearly a good enough reason to switch and move on. And speaking of moving on, let's go to number 6. Number 6 says, and this might be the really surprising one of the lot, we've got a whole lot to learn from beer and soap and cars. Now, what on earth am I talking about there? Well, let me take a look. Here's some companies we're all familiar with. All right, we got Nike, we got Apple, we got Starbucks, BMW, and Google. We get it. Okay, these are all companies. But what do they all have in common? They all sell different stuff. BMW does not sell coffee, and Nike does not sell computers. What do they have in common? Well, a number of different things. First of all, they've all got a very well-known name. There isn't one of those names, whether you buy and use the stuff that they sell or not, there's not one of those names that you don't recognize. The second thing they've got in common is a strong reputation. There's a lot of people that like their stuff and say good things about them. You may or may not be one of those people, but you can't knock it that each one of those companies has a really good reputation. They also have consistent and reliable, let's call them products, and I get it that some of those provide services like you do, but whether it's products or whether it's services, they're consistent and they're reliable. You're not going to go to one BMW store and buy, a really crappy car, and another one you get a good one. You're not going to go to Starbucks and get a lousy cup of coffee at one of their locations and a really good somewhere else. No, it's consistent, and by when you buy from that company, you can rely on what they sell. They also have a strong leadership position within their market. Every one of those is, at or close to the top of their sector. They also have no given single individual responsible. Now, several of them had strong leaders to get them started, but they've all grown to the point where they're not relying on one particular person for their success. No, they've got lots of people who create that success. And if one of those people goes, the company doesn't come tumbling down. And finally, what they've got is an economic resilience, meaning that the economy can go up and down a little bit, but those companies are going to weather it because of all these other things. Now, what will all this add up to, all these 6 things? That all adds up to something we call a strong brand. They all have a strong brand. And you, too, today, need to have a strong brand. Now, branding used to be applicable to beer and soap and cars, like we talked about. But today, it also applies to what you sell. Now, branding, what we're trying to accomplish in this branding effort, if you want, curiously enough, is we're not trying to win projects. We're not trying to sell projects in the brand as we're trying to build our brand. We're trying to do something else. There's 3 things that we're trying to do. First thing we're trying to do is establish name recognition so that lots and lots of people know your name. I mean, how many times have you in your lifetime seen or heard the words Coca-Cola? Millions and millions of times, and probably isn't a person on the face of the earth who doesn't know the name Coca-Cola. So they've got the name recognition up the wazoo. The second thing that branding is trying to do is enhance reputation. So not only do I know your name, I know what you stand for. So if I say BMW, if I say Google, if I say Apple, we all not only know the name, but we have an idea. There are adjectives that immediately come to mind about those companies that tell you, all right, I get it. And again, whether you own or buy and use their products or services doesn't matter. Here I say Rolls-Royce. We all instantly have an idea of what that company's reputation is. And those things add up to the third thing, which is something that marketers like to call mind share. And mind share says that every one of those companies owns a little piece of your mental real estate. They all have invested in their advertising and their public relations over long periods of time to educate every one of us about what a BMW is, about Starbucks and why Starbucks is different than just going to get a coffee at the local diner, and about Apple and what Apple stands for. That's what we call mind share, and that's what you have to build as well. Now, every single one of the firms that I'm talking to today, your clients, they love you. They think you walk on water. They think you're fantastic. But we step outside that circle, outside that client circle, and the rest of the world says, who? Sorry, never heard of them. That's what a strong brand does, because your new clients are out there now. Your clients are currently the clients of your competitors. And if they've never heard of you, and if your brand hasn't reached them, then they're not even thinking about switching, are they? So that strong brand is something that you have to start thinking about, saying, how do we build our brand? What are the adjectives that people say about our brand? Not just the ones that you like to think that they might say, but the ones that they actually say, and the ones that we can then begin to educate them to say. All right, number 7 of 7.5. We're frequently called upon to do presentations, right? And we all put together a PowerPoint deck. Everybody says, where's your presentation? Oh, it's here on my thumb drive. Where's your presentation? Oh, I've got it back on the Q drive on the server back in the office. Well, the truth is that what's up on that wall, whatever you project up on there through PowerPoint, or whether you use board, whatever, however it is, that is not your presentation. Because if that was your presentation, we know what happens when we throw up, turn on those slides and we're all standing there watching and reading bullet points together. We bore these people to death, and they all fall asleep. And they're thinking, why couldn't you have just emailed me this file and I could go through it myself? If that is in fact your presentation, you could theoretically just email it to them and say, run through this slide deck, and then you know everything there is to know. But the fact is that up there on the wall is not your presentation. When you think about it, I go back, here's Apple again, and the legendary Steve Jobs, who was one of the world's best presenters and persuaders and salesmen. And when his presentations are absolutely legendary, and you can go on, it's worthwhile to go on YouTube and look at some of the old ones. But whatever he projected up on the wall, that was not his presentation, because he was the presentation. And the truth is that you are the presentation. That client came to see you. They want to kick your tires. They want to see how you handle a tough question if I throw you a curveball in an interview. They want to see what it's like to deal with you. Anybody can put together a slide deck and send it to us. But the presentation is not about some data dump that we're trying to, not data that we're trying to transmit. Again, there's a whole lot better ways to transmit data than standing up in front of a group and talking. But in terms of persuasion and connecting with a client, person to person, so that they can sense the chemistry that you have that's going to be really important to the success of that project, that can happen in a presentation. So the stuff that you throw up on the wall is just decoration and supporting information. I want to show you this photo. I love this photo. This is great. This is going way back. This is sort of Microsoft Introduction to Windows Vista. And you can imagine, look at that slide up there. The wow starts now. I bet they had a whole committee spent weeks trying to brainstorm for that tagline. But look at the faces of the people who are the presenters and tell me what the real presentation is here. You know, these guys are there's anything but wow, and they completely undermine the real message, the message that we're trying to get across there. If you don't bring that enthusiasm, that authenticity to your presentation, I don't care what you've got projected up on the wall. I'm getting that message from you because you are the presentation. All right, let's go to number 7.5, shall we? And this is just a piece of advice. So this isn't a thing that you need to know about your marketing. That's why it's only a half a thing, because it's a piece of advice. And the piece of advice is please stop trying to exceed expectations. Where do I get this? Well, I'd tell you, if I had a nickel for every time I'd seen this written in a brochure or spoken or written in a proposal or spoken at a presentation, I'd be lying on a beach in Margaritaville right now. I hear it so often, and your clients hear it so often, and it's just absolutely meaningless drivel because it's real easy to say, isn't it? But the problem with this is that there is a weak link in that claim because you say, we will exceed your expectations. Now, the problem with that is there's an implication that, number one, we've sat down with you and determined exactly what your expectations are. Hey, you guys are systems integrators. You love measuring things. Does anybody measure the performance against that claim? Did we set expectations and measure the expectations and measure our performance? No, we don't do any of those things. We just say we'll exceed your expectations and then hope that they buy that kind of BS that we're throwing around. We've got to be real careful about that. So instead of just tossing that word out, why don't we adopt a formal onboarding process? So at the beginning of every project, you have a specific meeting to sit down with your client, a formal meeting that says, let's figure out exactly what your expectations are. Let's figure out exactly how we can measure our performance against them. And then let's have a report card that tells us how we've done against those things. Let's set those expectations and set the metrics about those things, rather than just spouting off, we'll exceed your expectations. Okay, it's boring by this point, and it's utterly meaningless. So why don't we instead establish exactly what those expectations are and the metrics that we're going to use to measure our performance against them? Now, and you guys, again, you guys are the system integrators. You're the world's master measurers when it comes to the process engineering, and we're monitoring the metrics all over the place. Well, let's do it for ourselves too, shall we? Well, there's 7.5 things that you didn't know, or probably didn't know, or may not have known about your marketing, but I wouldn't be surprised at all that you might have a few questions, and we've got, what have we got here, 7 minutes in our hour. And I'd be more than happy to take a few questions if anybody has some. Monica, I'll let you field those questions and pass them along. I would also, while you're thinking about that, remind you that I am going to be speaking at the executive conference in San Francisco next month. And if you're going to be there, I'd invite you to come up and introduce yourself and say hello. And if you've got some questions then, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you at that point. So is anybody, okay, here we got a first question. What is marketing versus selling within my view? Well, we do get caught up in terminology, and I do like to break that down and be a lot more specific about that. In my personal lexicon, the word marketing is a big, broad umbrella term that takes in anything and everything that we might do to help bring in work. So if you're writing a proposal, that's a subset of marketing. If you are trying to close a deal with a client, that's a subset of marketing. If you're taking a client to lunch or out for a golf afternoon, all those are subsets of marketing. Now within those, we have a number of different different categories. I talked about brand building. Brand building is what a lot of people use the word marketing as what they're referring to, which means getting the word out to the entire marketplace. I'm not trying to sell this particular client, but I'm trying to build my name recognition and reputation, like we talked about in branding. That I refer to as building your brand, which other people talk about as, that's the word that they use, as marketing. Business development is another subset of marketing, and that is where we are building those one-to-one relationships for purposes of doing business together, to build up that trust that is so necessary. Selling, on the other hand, is where we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. We've got this particular project for this client, and there's a scope of work, and there's a schedule and a budget, and now we're trying to close on this particular deal. And that might involve a proposal, it might involve an interview or a presentation, and it's certainly going to involve some negotiations. And that, in my view, is the sales part of the entire cycle. So that's how I use the words. And again, generally speaking, marketing versus selling within a lot of people, the marketing is sort of that building that brand for the larger market to get to know who we are. Selling is one-to-one with that particular client on this particular project. Anybody else got any other questions? No? All right. Well, just then, if we don't have any questions, and again, please don't hesitate to, buttonhole me at the conference, and we'd be happy to have a conversation with you. But I do want to leave you with something, and that is, if you're interested in more, I want to pass along to you this reading list. If you're interested in getting to know a little bit more about marketing, these 3 books would be absolutely fabulous for you. The first one, by a fellow named Harry Beckwith, is called Selling the Invisible. And I referred to that. I said, what you sell is absolutely invisible. They can't see it, touch it, smell it, taste it, can't try it out ahead of time. And Harry Beckwith addresses exactly this in his book, Selling the Invisible. He's talking about selling professional services and why it's different than selling all kinds of other things and the aspects that you have. And of course, he talks extensively about relationships and the importance of relationship marketing. The second book, a classic, been around for years, called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. And that was one of the things that the first books I picked up when I started to learn how to do this kind of marketing, Al Reese and Jack Trout. A short little book, you can read it in probably, one evening it will take you. There's probably no more than 100 pages in that book, maybe not even that many. And you just suddenly say, oh, wow, I never even thought about it from that perspective. So I'd encourage you to get that. And the final one, Harvey Mackay. Harvey Mackay is a master networker, and then he's got this book called Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. And the premise is that the day you discover you're really thirsty is a lousy day to start digging a well. And it's the same that, the day you realize that you need some contacts and you need some people to help you with leads and introductions and all the rest of it is a lousy day to start building your own network. So these 3 books are fabulous books. I have them in my library. I've read each one of them multiple times. And I'd encourage you to get them, whether, you might want the Audible, or you might want the e-version, or you might want the old-fashioned book made out of paper. But I strongly encourage you to get these 3 books, read through them, and you will guarantee that you'll be a whole lot better at marketing. And suddenly these 7.5 things, you'll say, yeah, I knew those, because I'm a whole lot smarter about marketing. Anyway, and with that, I want to thank you again for joining me here this afternoon and joining the CSIA webinar programs. Thanks, Tony, for inviting me to come along, and I look forward to seeing everybody at the conference next month in San Francisco. Monica, back to you.
Thanks, David, and thank you, everyone, for your participation in today's program. Note that the full webinar will be archived on controlsys.org in the webinar archive within the next day or so. We've actually changed our menu a little bit, so look for the podcast and webinars menu. Many thanks to John Weber, Monica Anderson, and the whole team at Software Toolbox for hosting and sponsoring our monthly webinars. Software Toolbox was created in 1996 to rid the industry of bad third-party software experiences. They do this by providing a variety of industrial automation software tools and applications, the knowledge of how they work together or with other automation software to deliver end-user value and a responsive, proven support process, all focused on lowering risk. Find them on the web at softwaretoolbox.com. CSIA has just launched our own podcast. It's called the Talking Industrial Automation Podcast. It's a show to help you get to know the people that make modern manufacturing and processing possible. Along the way, we will touch on integration technology, trends, and challenges. If you're a manufacturer, end user, client, supplier, or system integrator interested in industrial automation, I hope you will enjoy the insights CSIA members will bring to this podcast. Visit CSIAexchange.com/podcast. If you have not done so already, I encourage you to register for the 2018 CSI Executive Conference held April 24th through the 27th in 2018 in San Francisco, as David mentioned. In fact, all accounts are that we are going to blow up our record attendance. We've already gone way past that, and so it's still climbing. So be sure to be part of an exciting conference for sure. If you're contemplating CSI certification and need any other information on that or the conference, you can visit controlsys.org. This is Tony Verhoeven at CSIA. Thanks for attending, and goodbye.